continue the conversation about the priorities for the 2022 legislative session with the Majority Leader of the House, Representative Ryan Winkler. Thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
Both Republicans and DFLers share a desire to reward frontline workers and to replenish the unemployment trust fund. There remains disagreement over the details of the frontline worker pay. What is the likelihood that at least these two issues will get resolved early on in the session?
I think all legislators need to be aware of how much tension and stress there is still out in our communities. Families are unsure about childcare and schools and jobs. Businesses are unsure how they're going to get workers and if their supply chain is going to deliver products that their customers are looking for on time. So I think it really is important for us to focus on families, on workers, and especially on small businesses. So I think we can move forward to support workers, especially frontline workers. I think there is a compromise that we can get done, and I think that we can address the increase in unemployment insurance rates that businesses are going to pay. The key is to make sure that we're supporting people who need it the most from the bottom up, not just handing out big benefits to major corporations at the top.
Criminal activity has been rising over the past few years, both statewide and nationally. The House DFL has proposed a $100 million plan to improve public safety. How would these funds be used to provide greater safety in communities and to deter criminal activity?
We think that we should take a holistic approach. It isn't enough to have a simple slogan and say, lock them up, and that will make our communities safer. What we actually need to do is make sure that law enforcement has the tools that it needs in order to make arrests and bring some consequences to people who are harming others. That means that law enforcement not only in some cases needs more officers, but they need better intelligence gathering and analysis that the state can help provide. They need to make sure that they can function better across jurisdictions so that they're sharing information about potential perpetrators. And we need to make sure that communities are involved. There are a lot of people doing really terrific work to intervene on the front end and disrupt violence from happening in the first place, and investing in people who might otherwise be doing things we don't want. So we think a holistic approach of community and policing together is how we can address crime. But there are no easy, quick solutions. We just need to be really focused on getting resources where it can do the most good.
Paid family and medical leave and sick and safe time are not new issues in the legislature. They've been around for some time, but the advocacy for those programs has kind of risen to the top with this legislative session agenda because it's being promoted by both the House DFL Caucus, the Senate DFL Caucus, and Governor Walz. Why is now the time to implement these two programs? Because
the lack of paid leave, the lack of access to medical leave has never been more stark for so many families. People are dealing with it on a daily basis. If a child care is closed down because of COVID, if a school is closed down because of COVID, if a family member has to stay home from work because of an exposure at their workplace, there are so many ways that people are losing lots of money in their paychecks because of the lack of paid leave. And that's really, I think, what's bringing this issue to the forefront. Obviously, the rising prices affects everybody, but that is pretty small in comparison to losing income for days and weeks every month because of medical issues. So we think it's critically important to provide that benefit for all Minnesotans. Everybody pays in, everybody has access to a benefit. It seems pretty basic.
And as I understand it, I think Speaker Hortman said this, the surplus provides the initial startup dollars that are needed that, the state didn't have necessarily before in terms of getting this done.
Yeah, we'd like to see an equal amount of money for businesses and for workers. So if we're going to help the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund with billions of dollars, then billions of dollars should be going to workers and families in Minnesota. It's not a question of how do we just help those at the top. It's a question of how do we provide more security and stability for families and help address their rising costs and the way that they're losing out on income. So we think doing both is the best approach.
Speaking of families, the shortage of childcare options and a lack of affordable housing are not new challenges, and yet, like so many things, the pandemic seems to have exacerbated them. How is the DFL planning to address these two very big issues?
The families I talk to are scrambling. When I talk to people about childcare and the need to, and housing, of course, is a different issue, but equally important. But on childcare, they're just scrambling right now to figure out how to get to work, how to get their daily lives to happen with lack of affordable childcare. Affordability has been an issue for a long time. now just access, just even having anything out there is an issue. And we need to do this work. We need to create an opportunity for both parents to work, or if there's a single parent household, for that parent to be able to work. That requires affordable childcare. And no business can count on workers who don't have access to reliable childcare. So that's an imperative for families, but for businesses as well.
And then on the housing piece, anything there? I mean, childcare is really important, but I assume there's some ideas coming forth from.
Well, we're very concerned about the rapid closure of the Housing Relief Fund, and we know that we need to address affordability, not just on the homeless side or the low-income side, but for middle-class families as well. Housing has just really gone through the roof, and we need to help figure out across the board how to help bring prices down and provide more options. There have to be more units available for people to buy, or this is not going to work.
With the nearly $8 billion surplus, Governor Walz has proposed giving some of that back in what he called Walz checks. The Senate Republicans instead would like to see the Social Security tax completely removed and also some tax cuts ongoing. Does the DFL have any kind of giving back, or is much of the surplus going to be spent on expanding one-time programs or the like?
Well, we know there will have to be give and take this legislative session. What we are really resistant to is making permanent tax cuts that help very few people at the very top that will create big budget deficits in future years. We saw that in the late 90s, the last time we had a big boom. We cut taxes, we took on some additional state spending for education, and we had a decade worth of deficits afterwards that really hurt our ability to fund a lot of priorities. So we do not want to go down the path of creating big budget problems in the future. So we are focused on one-time tax credits, the kind of thing that will put more money into a family's pocket right now to help with costs, and not the kind of ongoing changes that will, I think, really harm the state's ability to provide basic services. And lastly, very few Minnesotans actually pay Social Security taxes. It's just the regular progressive income tax. If you have a high enough income, then some of the Social Security will be taxed. But for the vast majority of Minnesotans who receive Social Security, they do not pay state tax.
Minnesota Public Radio ran a story this week about how quickly the spots for free certified nursing assistant training filled up. The initiative was recently announced by Governor Walz using American Rescue Plan money in order to try to fill that hole in long-term care. They're just desperate for certified nurses. But it highlights the struggle that so many Minnesotans face for any kind of advanced training or college. I saw that the DFL platform is for a freeze on statewide higher education, but does that go far enough?
We also need to look at the state grant program and look for ways to put money into that system so that people, regardless of where they go to school, if they have low income, are better able to afford college. The state is not going to solve by itself the whole problem of the extreme expense of higher education. Right now, there's a whole generation of students who really have to question the value of higher education at all, given the cost. And that's not good for our economy, that's not good for a sense of opportunity or hope, and it's not good for bringing people of diverse backgrounds into the economy and into the middle class. So there are all kinds of reasons why we have to get a handle on that. We will do what we can at the state, but it is a bigger issue in higher ed.
Finally, before we go, I have to ask you about bonding because it's an even year, a traditional bonding year. The state will have an influx of federal dollars. In terms of leveraging that, what kinds of projects is the DFL most interested in?
Well, that's the good news here is that President Biden and the Democratic Congress passed a major infrastructure bill that will send billions of dollars to Minnesota. As a result of their action, roads, bridges, transit, clean water infrastructure, all kinds of basic infrastructure in Minnesota will be funded for years to come, and the state has to put up its part of the matching funds. The bad news is this session we don't yet know where all that money will go, and so we are a little bit unclear what unmet needs we will need to address. But in communities across the state, there are basic economic development, basic infrastructure needs that we believe we need to fund. Interest rates still remain low. We have the capacity to bond for $2.7+ billion, and so we think it's a time to continue investing in Minnesota's core infrastructure.
Representative Ryan Winkler, House Majority Leader, thank you so much.
Thank you.